The following is a conversation with Steven Pinker. He's a cognitive psychologist at Harvard University. He's the author of The Blank Slate, Rationality, Why It Seems Scarce, Enlightenment Now, and my favorite book of his, The Better Angels of Our Nature, which I just ordered on Amazon some days ago. I just ordered it. I'm preparing for a talk with some people. I will announce that tomorrow on Twitter, and I'm preparing for that talk, and I needed that book. So we talked about some things. This was recorded during the Ukraine-Russia conflict, and we talked about some things that have taken on a significant toll since the time this podcast was recorded. We talked about religion, we talked about political tribes, we talked about identity, we talked about language, how language shapes a nation. And in just that brief 37 minutes of this podcast, I got a lot, I learned a lot, It confirmed some of my suggestions, like the issue with Nigeria, the language issue we have, a cultural issue we're having, and the solution was that we shouldn't take on any languages, but we should learn the other languages. We need to learn the other languages to solve the problem, the linguistic problem in Nigeria. So this was fun. This 7 minutes was not dull. It was really fun. So if you enjoy this conversation, please give me a thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up and subscribe. It is very important that you subscribe. I'll be announcing some things on Twitter tomorrow, like time this video is recorded. I'll be announcing some things on Twitter tomorrow, and that'll be fun. It will be fun, and it is something that I'm very sure everyone is looking forward to. It is a convention that will shake this country. A convention that will shake this country. So enjoy, guys. Why do you think colonial states often regress back to violent coups and violence in general after their independence?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear. Can you repeat the question?
I have an accent. Yeah.
We all have accents.
Yeah. Why? How come we can't hear our own? I can't hear my accent.
We can't hear our own. Yes, because I think it's because we learn language early in life when our brain is plastic. It is easier to learn the sound pattern of your language when you're young, and then it's just what language sounds like to you. Different. Everyone has an accent. There's no such thing as unaccented speech. We just call, when we hear the sound pattern of someone else's community, we call it an accent because it isn't the same as the sound pattern that we have learned.
All right. Oh, why do you think why do colonial states often regress back into violent coups and violence in general after their independence?
I think that any society that does not have good government and rule of law can fall into violence. And I think all societies have to negotiate the violence of tyranny when you have a government that oppresses its people, and the violence of anarchy when there is no rule of law, and there will always be some people who will want to exploit others, to rob them, to rape them, to steal their property. In order to protect yourself against other people who might want to aggress against you, then you have to be aggressive. And so you can have, just out of simply fear of being attacked, you might attack first. Well, the other side, they're worried about you attacking them, and so they might attack you, and each side might launch a preemptive attack out of fear of being attacked first. Now, many societies, when they're faced with this fear, they then have to develop a tough, belligerent, warlike stance so that they are so fierce that others will be afraid to attack them. And they have to retaliate. That is, they have to exert revenge if there's any sign of insult or disrespect. And so you can get feuds and cycles of violence, one avenges a attack by the other. The second one avenges the attack by the first. Each one thinks that their own attack is justified payback. They don't count their own attacks. They only count the other attacks. And so you can get cycles of violence that get worse and worse and worse. If you have a good government, then it can be like a referee applying the rules. Each side can accept the judgment of the courts, of the police, without admitting weakness. And so the rates of violence can come down. So I think what happened in a number of cases of decolonization in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, is that sometimes the colonial governments would vanish. And they were, of course, often very repressive. It was the violence of tyranny. But then when they retreated, there was no good government that took their place. And so you got the violence of anarchy.
Yeah. There has been about 3 or 4 coups in Africa, but in the last year, I think 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Do you think Africa would have fared better if we went through the civilizing process on our own? Because I feel to some extent the nations were not built by those who inhabited it, who inhabit it, but by colonial government. Do you think if we had went through those processes on our own, it could be peaceful at this moment, or we could have made progress?
Yes, well, I think that having a fair democratic government, that's how you get the right balance between the violence of tyranny and the violence of anarchy. A democratic government exerts just enough force to prevent people from killing each other without itself oppressing the people. So that is what all countries should aim for. I know that Nigeria has made progress toward democracy, but like many countries, it's struggling with militias and secessionist movements.
Yeah.
It has been a problem in the history of all countries. Europe has only recently been able to, at least Western Europe, even Eastern Europe, as we see now in Ukraine, is threatened with problems. But Western Europe, after many centuries of warfare and civil war and international war, finally managed to settle into a stable peace. And we can hope that more and more of the world will follow that lead.
Okay. What idea do you think, America seems to have been stable for a very long time, the Western world seems to have been stable for a very long time. What idea do you think unites the nation? The United States.
So yes, it is the key question. And I think what is crucial is that the country be seen not as as the expression of one ethnic group or one religion or one race, but more like a contract. That is, everyone who happens to live in a territory agrees that we will have a government that will serve all of our interests. And the country is an association. It's an agreement. It's a contract. It's an organization for all the people who live within its borders. It's not the expression of the soul of this ethnic group or that tribe or that race. In theory, that's how the United States began. Now, of course, in practice, in the United States, for a long time, it was just a white Christian country. But the concept, the idea, the founding principle of the United States was that it was a negotiated agreement among all the people. That's what the Declaration of Independence said. It said every human has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We need a government to help us attain those rights, that is to protect us against being attacked or robbed or killed or raped by others. That's what a government is for. But the government only has its power because the people grant it that power for their own benefit. Now, that says nothing about white, it says nothing about Christian, it says nothing about Anglo-Saxon. And course, in the American history, still had to achieve that ideal. It didn't have it at the beginning, and it's still incomplete. But that is what I think countries should strive for. Now, how do you get that feeling, given that in reality, many countries have numerous tribes, ethnic groups, religions, races? Well, it's a constant, I think it has to be a constant effort by the government to prove its own legitimacy by saying, we represent all the people. We are not the expression or the instrument of one ethnic group or one tribe. In South Africa, when the apartheid regime was finally dismantled, Nelson Mandela said, we should organize around our soccer team, our football team, because that's something that black and white doesn't matter. We all support them. Now, that, of course, was a bit of a joke, but there was a serious idea, namely that the nation itself should be something that everyone in its borders supports as something that they all have in common. And that is a problem in parts of the world like Iraq and Afghanistan, where the nation just doesn't register. No one thinks about the nation. They think about their tribe, they think about their clan, they think about their blood relatives, but the concept of Iraq or Afghanistan, and then to some extent Nigeria, needs to be made more salient. We are all in this together. If the rule of law is applied fairly, we're all better off.
To what extent do you think the concept of American dream, because I've noticed something about the years that people could actually migrate. You could actually migrate or immigrate permanently to the US and be equally patriotic as those born in the land. To what extent? To what
the
extent?
The idea of sometimes called the melting pot. I'm from Canada, and there we called it the mosaic. That is, each piece still retains its identity. It's not melted down, but the entire picture is made out of all of the little pieces. And you don't have the picture emerges and is not the same as the little pieces. That's the Canadian concept of a mosaic. But I think it's important that any country welcome its immigrants, consider them to be 100% citizens. I'm an immigrant because I was born in Canada. I moved to the United States. And my grandparents were immigrants to Canada. They were born in Poland and Moldova. But the idea that your race doesn't matter, your ethnic group doesn't matter, your tribe doesn't matter. It matters for your own life. It matters for your food. It matters for your music. It matters for your dress. But it doesn't matter for the law. Okay. It doesn't matter for the government. It doesn't matter for the police. It doesn't matter for the courts. It doesn't matter for the army.
That is the contrast with the US and Nigeria, because we have Sharia law in about 14 states, I think. Sharia law is applicable in 14 states. And if I were to move to the states right today and call a Prophet Muhammad the pedophile or something like that, I'll get arrested and be indefinitely imprisoned. Without so it actually matters by region and do you see you wrote a book on rationality, your work, and I've been thinking about an idea that came into that I thought about today. Do you think there is a contrast, a contrast between freedom and rationality? Because I think freedom is an emotional state, and can we be equally free and be rational at the same time? Because I think freedom is an emotional state, and when people stress the idea of freedom, they tend to live by their emotions, not by their reason.
Yes, well, the discussions of freedom go back to John Locke, which then inspired the American revolutionaries, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and James Madison. And the idea is that everyone should have freedom simply because what makes one person have the right to control the behavior of someone else? We're all born the same. We all have desires. We all have needs. We all have wants. There's just nothing that allows one person to control the other. It's not rational. Now, the one restriction on freedom, of course, is your freedom can't infringe on the rights of other people. There's a saying, your right to swing your arms ends where my nose begins.
Yeah.
So we have governments, we have law, we have prisons, we have courts in order to prevent people from impinging on the freedom of other people by hurting them, by robbing them, by raping them. And that is where the only legitimate reason to restrict freedom, namely if it hurts someone else. But otherwise, freedom is irrational. Restrictions on freedom are irrational because other than accidents of birth, coincidence, if I happen to be born into a royal family, what difference should that make? Why does that give me the right to control you? It shouldn't. Why does being Black or white or Christian or Muslim or Jewish, everyone, all humans have the desire to be happy, to be healthy, to be well fed. It's illogical to say, well, you have royal blood, so you have the right to control someone else. We're all in the same boat. We all have the same needs.
I think I would like to make a segue around this. Something I think I forgot, a question I forgot to ask the other time. Do you think, how would you best unite Uyghurs and the Uyghurs of Uyghurs in China, Xinjiang and Chinese? Because I've seen some tensions between them. How would you best unite them? Or Rome and Saudi Arabia, if you are to, how would you best unite Rome and Saudi Arabia into a single country?
How would you unite? Do you say Saudi Arabia
and Rome into a single country?
Yes, well, the principle of universal human rights, which almost all countries already agree to. They signed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights beginning in 1948. So they're already, at least on paper, at least morally committed to human rights. So that must be emphasized in all conversations between diplomats, between leaders. And then, as I mentioned before, within a country, the country should be organized around the laws, the principles, the fact that they are in a union where working together, they can make life better for everyone. That has to be the central idea behind a government. In the case, you mentioned the case in Nigeria that many of the regions are under Sharia law. Yeah. Well, another important principle is the separation of church and state, or in this case, mosque and state, simply because religious law is just it's arbitrary. There's no reason for it. It's just what you were born into. That's not a good reason to do anything. You have to have a good step-by-step logical argument. There are good arguments for why murder should be illegal. Namely, I don't want to be murdered, and so I can't murder anyone else. Yeah. I don't want to be raped, so I can't rape anyone else. There are good logical arguments for laws. If the argument is just, well, sorry, you were born a Christian, you have to obey Christian law. You were born a Muslim, you have to obey Muslim law. Why should the religion of your parents determine what government does to you? And if the basis of a law is just, it was written in the Bible, it was written in the Quran, that's not a reason. We know that thousands of years ago, when these documents were written, people believed all kinds of wrong things. They believed that the sun went around the earth. They believed that humans were created only 5,000 years ago. They had no idea how the sun worked or how life works or where disease comes from. So people can be wrong. People in the past were wrong. You always have to have good reasons, arguments, evidence. And just because it was written in some book that was written 1,000 years ago, that's not a good reason. And that's why laws should not be based on religion, because religion is arbitrary belief that just comes down to you from your ancestors. And we know that our ancestors' beliefs can be wrong.
Yeah, yeah. What about the language aspect of colonial states? We have about 500 and more than 500 languages in Nigeria. So how do we work around that? And do we keep the English language? I think there are some consequences to keeping the English language. But what do you think? What do you think is the best option? You know, I speak Yoruba. I speak Yoruba. Hausa. In the largest area of the country, they speak Hausa, majorly Hausa. Down south, they speak Igbo and other languages around there. You know, what do you think is the solution to that?
Well, the one very helpful feature of the human brain is that we can speak multiple languages. Probably more people on Earth are bilingual or multilingual than monolingual.
Yeah.
So actually, speaking only one language is really the exception, not the rule. Now, most Americans only speak one language, but that makes the United States an unusual country. Most people speak multiple languages. Now, it just so happens that English, well, in countries that used to be part of the British Empire, English was left behind, including the United States and Canada and Australia and Nigeria. And also English is just spreading because it's the language of science, it's the language of technology, it's the language of popular culture and rock and roll and Hollywood. So no one decided, but just it happens that English is becoming the world's universal second language. So in the case of Nigeria, of course, it's an official language, one of the official languages, but it's very convenient if everyone has a language in which they can communicate. There's nothing particularly special about English other than the fact that the British Empire stretched out across the whole world, and then the United States became the most technologically and culturally influential country. So the language that was spoken in those countries had worldwide penetration, worldwide reach. And that's convenient if people can use English as the universal second language. And for many people, the first language, but more people, the second language.
All right. What about the cultural aspect of it, of choosing another language? I think I've been taking a program at Harvard University on Chinese history. It is like a professional course, you know, like a MOOC course, and my professor said something. He said, once you adopt another culture's language, another culture's scripts, your way of life tends to drive towards that, you know, like it tends to, like, and I can see this in the Sino areas of China, Korea, Japan, Thailand, and those areas. The big influence China has on them is actually comes from their language. You know, they adopted their scripts, at least the origin. You know, what do you think is the cultural consequence of this? I think I would say we need a bedrock for the unification of the culture in Nigeria. In Nigeria, Hausa people are more behave more like Arabs than the African. I think so. Nigerians are more like Europeans than they are Yoruba. Yoruba people are more like, you know. So what do you think is the consequence of adopting a different script?
Well, every country has a mixture of elements that they take from different parts of their history. Their colonial history in the United States and Canada and Nigeria, their indigenous culture, the culture brought in by immigrants, the culture that we all just get from media and the World Wide Web. And each country has its unique combination. And people can switch. You can be both an American and a citizen of the world, and Jewish and and Polish American, people have multiple identities. You don't have to be a single thing. And so, and the most vibrant, healthy cultures are ones that mix together elements that they take from all over the world.
But how do you get stability, as in the stability of a single language? How do you get stability if you like? I remember I can look back to at China, when the Manchus invaded China during the Qin dynasty, the Great Qin, and there was this repression because they were bilingual, you know. The documents were written in Manchu language and Manchurian language and Chinese Mandarin. But how come? How do we? And you know, this was infuriating to the Chinese, that their language, you know, their some group of people came forward and came towards them and actually solved their culture and all of those things. But how do you get it? How do we get the stability the United States has with one single culture, with one single language, you know, some most part of Europe, some of them are just they use a single language and or how do you get that stability? Because I think there is and I wish we could discuss this further, but you know, but there is a cultural consequence here. Like this inferiority complex, and I know about this because it has happened to me. I when I was younger, I'm writing this on camera. When I was younger, I asked myself why Africa was just so backward. You know, why like, and I saw Chinese movies, I saw Hollywood movies, and I was like, wow, these movies are far better than my own, and I can see the technological advancement and the innovations and the science, and I was like, this group of people, is this some kind of coverture? Are they just better than me or something like that? You know, like biologically, and I was able at some points later, I was able to get some education, to educate myself on the topic, but there is this inferiority complex that arises from, in Africans, that arises from, as in saying looking outward yourself, outward of your culture. I'm very sorry. I have to.
Anyway, are you still there? Yes.
Yeah, I'm still there.
Okay, very
good. I'm
yes.
back. That was my camera. There is this inferiority complex that actually arises from seeing perfection outside of yourself. You know, what you live by, everything you say is outside of yourself, outside of your culture. And when I speak to, I have conversations with people here, and I tell them, you know, I ask them, what is the best thing you love about Nigerian culture, about African culture, and they'll be like, they'll be void of any answers. They will have no response or anything. So I wish we could actually make it. We had our own language, you know, but you know, but I know this I can give you the statistics. More than 60% of Nigerian women are bleaching their skin, you know, are bleaching are toning their skins, you know, their skin.
60%?
Yeah, it's more than 60%. More than that, you know, that is not, black isn't beautiful in Africa. At least it's that's the funniest thing, you know. That was the title of the article after the poll BBC conducted. Now, right here, black isn't beautiful, you know. You know, so
I know that is true in other parts of the world, because my former wife was Indian.
Okay.
She was very dark skinned.
Okay.
And she said that in Indian culture, there is prejudice against darker skin and favor of lighter skin within Indians. We're not even talking about Europeans or Africans, but the same kind of prejudice. Yeah. That's very sad. I mean, it's silly because of course there are beautiful people of all skin colors, and it is something to try to overcome. I mean, in general, the question of the historical development of Africa, this has been addressed in a famous book by Jared Diamond called Guns, Germs, and Steel, where he asked the question, why did Europe colonize Africa? Why didn't Africa colonize Europe? Why did Europe colonize Australia? Why didn't Aboriginal indigenous people in Australia conquer Europe? And an American economist, African-American economist, Thomas Sowell, independently asked the same question in his book, Migrations and Culture, Race and Culture. They both came up with the same explanation, that if you just look at geography, there are disadvantages to Australia, there are disadvantages to Africa, disadvantages to the Americas compared to Eurasia. One of them is Eurasia is just so huge and it's easy to migrate across the east to west across Eurasia, whereas sub-Saharan Africa was blocked by the Saharan Desert and is north-south, which means that any crops and animals that are domesticated in one region could not be adapted to another region, because as you go north or south, the climate changes. As you go east and west, the climate is the same. Also, so what happened, the advantage of Europe and Asia is simply that it's such a huge area. Also, it has natural harbors. Africa has very few natural harbors. Europe had rivers that were navigable and that went out to the sea. There are few navigable rivers in Africa and in Australia. And so just going back thousands of years, there were some geographic advantages to Europe and Asia that South America and Australia and Africa did not have. And that allowed more wealthy and powerful and complex civilizations to develop in Eurasia compared to Africa and Australia and the Americas. Anyway, that's in a nutshell the theory of Jared Diamond and Thomas Sowell.
And Tommaso. I'm a fan of Tommaso. I wish people would read his book more in Nigeria.
Me too. I think he's brilliant.
Yeah, he's very brilliant. He's very brilliant. He's very brilliant. I have some of his books.
Oh, very good.
Why do you think about religion? About religion. This is a very, very intricate part of our society, and I think it is one of the major reasons why we can't form a national bond in Nigeria. Why we can't form a national bond in Nigeria? Religion. Why do you think people are so willing to believe stupid things?
Why are people so what?
So willing to believe stupid things, I don't know.
Stupid things, yes.
No.
Now, I'm sorry, are you specifically referring to did you religion. Say the Igbo in Nigeria?
Sir?
The Igbo?
No, not the Igbo. I mean every single ethnic group. Every single
okay, yes.
Every single ethnic group in Nigeria believes in some supernatural, and it forms the basis of they breed alongside these ideas. They marry alongside these ideas, and a Christian is more likely to marry a Christian, even within Israel tribe. The same thing for Igbo and the same thing for Hausa and all other tribes, So why do you think people are so willing to believe stuff like that? Now,
well, I think ultimately we evolved from people who lived in tribal villages and regions, and before there was stable government, before there was courts of law, before there were police, everyone had to be very nervous, distrustful, even hateful of the people in the next village because they might attack them at any time, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And so we evolved from tribal peoples. Biologically, I think that's still in our brains.
Yeah.
We have to learn to overcome that. We have to learn to think of the entire human species, Homo sapiens. That's our tribe.
Yeah.
Now that's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's an idea, it's a concept, it's a theory, and it's pretty recent. And it's one that is not it's not cognitively natural or biologically natural, but it's a very good idea. And
Yeah,
it's an
yeah, yeah,
idea
yeah.
that we have to spread. It's an idea that we have to value. We have to point out why societies that are dedicated to universal human rights are better places than ones that are divided into tribes.
Yeah.
That's where people want to migrate to. That's where that's what leads to greater human health and happiness, which is
Yeah.
what everyone wants.
Yeah. Do you think if the human race had an external enemy, it would actually aid us in forming a bond, a word, I don't know, what should I call it, Do you think if we had an external enemy, like, maybe if we were facing an external threat, that would aid the bond, of the
Well,
human
some people
species?
say that, yes, there's the theory that if humans were threatened by Martians,
Yeah,
then
yeah,
that would finally unite us. We'd all
yeah,
have something in common. So
yeah.
I hope it doesn't take that.
I
That
hope so.
instead of Martians, though, there are problems that face all of humanity,
Mm.
like climate
Climate change,
change,
yeah.
like hunger and
Mm.
disease
Mm.
and energy, problems that everyone faces just because you're a human being. And we have
Yeah.
to realize that we all face the problem of poverty and disease and violence and hunger. And that's what unites us as humans. We all want to overcome them. And so let's pretend that those are the Martians.
Yeah, yeah. All right, my last question. This is the question that has preoccupied me. My last question, what is love? I've been asked this question several times, and is it a human construct? What love is? I was asked to ask you. I was told to ask you, like one of my followers told me to ask you what love is. What do you think love is? Is it a human construct? Is it real? Why is it needed?
Love?
Yeah.
Well, I think there are different kinds of love. There's, of course, romantic love.
Yeah.
Infatuation, head over heels, your heart pounds, you have to have that other person. There's also the love of children. There's the love that keeps a husband and wife together over many decades after the original passion fades, but people still are love each other. So at least there's those different kinds of love, the kind of family, companionate love, and the romantic passion. And those are, I think, not the same. We often talk about love of all humanity. To be honest, I don't think we have to rely on love of all humanity. I don't love some random person in China or in South America the way I love my mother or my wife, or my grandchildren. But I think even if you don't love people, you can respect their rights. You can know that they have a right to life and health and comfort, just like we do.
Yeah.
And so I personally don't think that love is the answer worldwide.
Yeah.
I think love is important in our personal lives. I think what's important worldwide is respect for human rights.
Well, thank you so much for coming to my podcast.
Daniel, it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you
very much for having me on your podcast.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I hope you will tell me when it's available.
Yeah, I will email you. Thank you.
Okay.